So, Steve, mate, thanks for being here. We've, known each other for a few years now, and you found yourself in a particularly challenging situation in the last couple of years. Can you tell us a bit about where you find yourself today?
Yeah, sure. So, been diagnosed with a terminal illness, motor neurone disease, of which there's around 5,000 people in the UK now with it. I'm early stages, but I know of people now in the last stages and no cure, and you just have to live life every day.
Wow. So, yeah, and I obviously know that, and now the audience does too. It must demand reflection, doesn't it, on life?
It does. So, even though you know the end is coming, you do reflect on life's lessons. And I'm staying strong, and everybody around me is supporting me in that strength. But the reflection is, where the hell do you get it from? And is it parents? No. Because children actually try oppose the parents. And my reflection is, throughout the years in the business I'm in now and previous work in life, many leaders have been excellent role models. Now, don't get me wrong, not everyone has been like that. So one example I was thinking of, I remember one manager saying to me, your job is to make me look good. And he is the worst manager I've ever had. But the managers, all leaders really, who have been supportive, have been there, they've got your back, they understand people, and they're there with encouragement to encourage you to grow. And that has been drilled into my brain, and now I do it with the younger generation through mentoring. But my inner strength comes through real positive leaders.
Yeah, that's brilliant, mate. It really is. And again, I've got to say that, I mean, through this process, we stay in touch on a semi-regular basis, don't we? We speak perhaps at the weekend every couple of months. And you've been such an inspiration, because you've shown such mental fortitude and resilience in the face of this terminal situation, you're not going to escape from. And your response to it was to work harder, get down the gym, lift the weights, try and fight the muscles, find out, talk to me about the brain stuff. And it's just been such a phenomenal response. And I think, that's the bit I kind of want to dig into. But first and foremost, you say about your other career and the people you've met along the way. How did you get into being an engineer? What made you start off in this area?
I started in manufacturing back in 1992. Before that, I was a heavy plant mechanic.
Right.
So going in to manufacturing as a technician, I was always looking what we can do. What can we change? How can we improve? And after a couple of years of doing that, leadership said, let's get you on days, go do your HNC. Bearing in mind, I'd done 2 years of Open University at that time. Just get your HNC, we'll make you an engineer. And that just, of which I did in 8 months, 2-year course. And that put me on the road to where I am today.
Brilliant. So again, so people giving you opportunity, right? A leader doing what's best for you, which is what you mentioned a minute ago as well. It's doing what's best for others. I think we're going to probably mention a lot through this conversation. You mentioned some people that, you know, a number of people, and interestingly, probably more positive people than negative in your career. I probably, if I had to describe my career, say it the other way around, right? I had more negative leaders than I had positive ones. So what was the most influential experience or the most influential person in that professional journey? If you could pick one or two out, what would that look like?
So there is one person, it's called Graham. I'll not mention his last name. He was a plant manager who himself is suffering with MS. And he used to come into work every day and everything was focused on people. If issues were wrong with various machines, his first response was what part of the process failed. And it was not about blame. It is about encouraging others in a safe environment to solve problems, really.
Yeah, so that the safe environment is key, isn't it? People have got to feel safe.
Definitely.
Yeah, and leaders are the ones that make people feel safe, or not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, if it was a previous person, like I explained earlier, you made me look good. Would I have succeeded as much with that person? Absolutely not.
No.
And the reality is, you find people in life who you aspire to be like because you recognize goodness.
Yeah, powerful statement, mate. That is. Yeah, good stuff. So you've had some good role models. And you've mentioned earlier you're now looking to do that from a mentoring point of view for others. I wonder if that would be what you've been doing lately. Is that your most significant achievement in your career, or is there something else that stands out as your biggest accomplishment?
I think the biggest accomplishment was when I was working for an American company. There was a piece of equipment needed a redesign, and we went over to Utah, and people from around the world went to Utah with us. We led problem solving. I came away, designed new equipment, went back to Utah, tested it, and the thing just ran. So when we talk about vertical startup, this is true vertical startup. And the reason for that is listening to the people. So I had a concept, shared it. Steve, can we do this, that, the other? Put all them in, and it worked.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's something I've seen you carry through, because obviously I'm assuming it's going to be okay to mention that you currently work for Smith & Nephew and have done for some years. And we've been around the shop floor together, and you've shown me exactly that, a capacity to listen and respect the knowledge, the intuitive tacit knowledge that builds up in people's brains through doing the job, right? And
Yeah.
it links, you mentioned earlier about building people, and the Japanese word hitozukuri jumped into my mind because that's about building people before building things. And that's, you've just embodied that, you've just done that naturally. But so that, how long ago was that American Utah project? Because have you just been like that always? Or was it something you learned from those role models?
I think I learned it from the role models. When I was working in the heavy plant industry, I was very creative then, rewiring machines, changing whatever on machines, but learning from people is a class act. All right. You know, you can go in there, you can demand we do things. When you turn your back, people close the door on you. Whereas I can walk out on that shop floor now, and I would say 95% of the operators come up and hug.
Yeah, really.
And to me, that's testament to if you're good with people, they will be good to you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But that needs proper human connection, right? You have to be friends with people. You have to. It's not just about following a process, right? It's about
Yeah.
actually human beings being together.
Yeah. And the biggest failing I've seen in life in manufacturing is leadership not engaging with the operators.
Yeah.
The operators earn the money, and all we're doing is supporting them to make their life easier.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's a way round of looking at it. People just don't get, right. They don't
yeah,
see the operator as the value-adding part of the operation.
yeah.
Yeah. My next question was going to be, what's the biggest challenge you face in your career? But I think you just covered that with what you've just said. It's leadership, looking at things backwards, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, and some of it is because they don't understand. So when you're brought up in life, and don't get me wrong, I've been extremely lucky with the leadership that's been around me. But if you've not had that and you've been brought up divide and conquer, well, actually, that's who you become.
Yeah.
And it's only really through, well, from yourself understanding how the brain works, can you get that in to other people. So I did a 2-hour course pinched from some of your stuff, and people were like, get it now. I understand that as a leader, my influence actually governs the state of the nation on the shop floor.
Yeah, and that again, as a very strong thing to say, isn't it? It's something we quite often forget when we're in leadership positions, is that the culture is a reflection of our attitude towards people. And when we're under the cosh to hit the targets and deliver the EBITDA, then sometimes we lose sight of that, and we do things that are more focused on process and profit that damage people, rather than being that support function for people that ultimately links to higher improved processes and greater profit. And like you said, we look at it all backwards.
We do. So a great example of that when I first joined the 5.5 years ago, I went on one machine and the operators were, don't know what you're coming on here for. It's a bag of spanners, we'll say.
Polite.
And all I did was sit with them operators for 3 months and understanding that not every issue is a big issue on an engineering front, but putting or helping them decide what they need and then providing it, that machine's productivity went through the roof. And the reality is, in manufacturing, the biggest OEE gains you're ever going to get are people related.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love it. So, yeah, good. Well, that's why we've got on so well, because we've got a very similar philosophy. So, given all of that, everything that's been said so far, could you offer a definition of success from a professional point of view?
Yes, there's a few. I think, well, let me tell you a story. And this was a success of the year for myself. We had an apprentice, and I mentored the apprentice, and he was not very confident. And we worked on different ways to get his confidence up. And then he said to me, Steve, I need to lose weight. So, okay. And he said, the problem is, my mum cooks all these things that are not good for me. So I just said, well, how often do you cook? I don't. So we made a pact. This was a Friday. On the Monday, 3:30, he left work and he went home, cooked his mum and his sister their dinner. And he came back and his whole family was amazed. To me, him realizing for himself stuff he can do and the impact that has as well is by far better than fixing any machine.
Brilliant. Yeah, but confidence, right? Self-concept, how people feel about themselves, and the self-limiting beliefs they have in place, the assumptions they make about what they can and can't do. And what core values guide your decisions to approach that situation like that? What because not many people would think about that as a leader, helping a young guy get over his insecurity issues, to suggest going and cooking a meal. What values sit behind that, mate?
It's always about people. So to increase somebody's confidence or even abilities are to go try something new in a supported way. So as a leader, I can take the guy in a machine, show him, teach him, and eventually he'll get it. But life is not just about work. Life is how you are as a person external to your work. If you're a good person out, you're a good person in work.
So if I can put words in your mouth, although there's an outcome objective to achieve from a machinery business point of view, you're looking at the whole person to help and to grow. Back to that Hito Zakuri word, right? Build people before you build things. And you're to do that, you've got to recognize that it's not just in the four walls of a factory, it's the whole of life.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it makes so much sense. And again, and that's for me when we get into food and diet, because of the impact that has on, you know, how our brains can function and sleep and all the other things. And, you know, all of that should inform our approach. It's brilliant, mate. It really is. It's such a great story. Where do we take it from there? I mean, what other things, apart from that as a great example, what other things, do you do anything in particular that you think that you've learned to do over the years, other than listen, or perhaps more about listening, that makes sure people feel involved? Because if it's about people feeling valued and raising their own awareness of their own value by giving them opportunities to do things that prove that they're good in the world, what do you do? What is there anything, any tips you would give about how to do things as a leader to make people feel valued?
I always go back to Nelson Mandela, and he was once asked, how did you become a great leader? And he was. And his father was a tribal warrior, but leader of everything. And what Nelson said was, when they had group meetings in the late 1800s, early 1900s, everybody sat in a circle, so there was no hierarchy. And his dad always spoke last, because what you find is follow the leader, follow what the boss says, because I'm not confident enough to actually speak my mind. And it happens all the time, every time, that people don't have that emotional security to come out with their own words. And that's where it falls over. So as a leader, you have your meeting, don't share your thoughts, let others express their opinion. And it's encouraging people to do that. And then at the end, summarize, but then you can share yours.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story now, because that backs up what you just said. I was a general manager of a business, and there were some investors coming to have a look and see if they wanted to buy it. And I had cultivated that culture that you just described, of being the boss but being the one to speak last in my team. Right. So there were 5 key people, senior managers, around the table, and the investors asked some questions, and every one of the senior managers answered on behalf of their function and role in the business. And then they asked more questions and they answered again. They asked more questions and I answered, and they left. And the feedback I got was, that guy's a terrible leader because he didn't speak on behalf of these people. So it's a good example of just how different beliefs can be in industry about what good looks like, right? And I would propose that most people would admire Nelson Mandela way above and beyond the investors that I met. So yeah, we do get it backwards so often. It's really interesting. Right, so that's great positioning for everything. And thank you so much so far, because I can already think of about 8 different things you said that I just want to pick out as separate standalone clips because they're brilliant. What industries in a particular
You're breaking up a bit.
Oh, sorry, mate. Good stuff. Right. Okay. Yeah. So I was saying, Steve, we just had some technical difficulties there, which we managed to sort out. I was going to say that sort of like industry is always evolving, right? We're always learning something new. And what do you think's been missing? What's the missing piece?
It depends on the guy at the top. All right. So in industry, your CEO or site leader, if they are so insecure as to blame others, that trickles down the ladder all the way to the shop floor. Because quite wrongly, leaders want to be like their leader, which goes back to people like themselves. So if you're so insecure that you want to be like your leader, and if it's a bad person, trickles down all the way. And from an operator's point of view, they will hide and put things away so no one gets to find out. However, when you have a really, really good leader, and I've seen this quite often, where you can be yourself, then as that comes down to the shop floor, your operators, the money makers, they are open, they come out with ideas, they will drive your business. And so it's about having the right person at the top with the right attitude.
Brilliant. And that's that's to my last question, right? The missing piece. And so from a trends point of view, I think you've seen the beliefs about what good leadership looks like that change over the years.
Yeah, I have. I mean, you get companies with corporate values, but they're just words. It's only when they're displayed by leadership do you actually change the culture.
So you mean leading by example, not displayed on the wall, when people act the values.
Yeah.
So insightful, mate. It really is. It's a great conversation. Looking back at it, is there anything you'd have done differently in your career?
Yes. Knowing what I know now, I'd have started that journey, and it is a journey of change within yourself. I'd have started that from a very young age. And this goes back to leaders. You don't know what you don't know. And it's only when somebody shows you something different, you go, get it. How do I do this?
Yeah. And let's face it, I mean, leaders are under a lot of pressure themselves, right? And they're human, and they're stressed, and they have got targets to hit. They've usually got even bigger bosses to report to, and so this capacity to be open to something new is risky, isn't it? Because quite often the pressure they're under forces them to do what they already know. So
yeah, but what they think they know obviously doesn't produce the results. Therefore, trying something different actually may well do. Again, it just goes back to leadership. The right leadership, driving the right behaviours and beliefs in employees, you'll just reap dividends time after time.
Yeah, and we've both seen it. We've shared a lot more stories than we're covering here today to prove the point, and we've both achieved it ourselves, haven't we? So brilliant. I mean, given that, I think I probably know the answers to this one, but what advice would you give to somebody starting out, in manufacturing, not just as an engineer, but in any role in manufacturing today?
My advice was be true to yourself, learn about people, learn that the only true way of getting good results is by understanding and listening and actually doing what people suggest every time.
Can you elaborate on that for me, mate? Because I think I know what you mean, because a lot of times we ask for suggestion schemes and people come up with ideas and then they feel ignored. And you just do what you say you're going to do that's good for people.
It's about trust. I can walk out on a machine today. Yeah, I'll get me hug from everybody, which is brilliant. But Steve, could you do this for me? Get me a pink bracket to do X, Y, Z. And if I say yes, then I've got to follow it through. But I can say no. And it's that clear divide between when you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you're not, be truthful. Don't fob people off, because then your trust is gone. And to get trust back is a long journey.
Yeah. And I guess the extension of that in some respects would be respect, right? People respect you if they can trust you.
Absolutely, respect. I mean, your job as an engineer, or mine as an engineer, is all about respect. Respect for making people's lives easier. And if people's lives are easier, productivity will go up. If that respect is not there and you just hit people with a stick all the time, productivity will go down.
Yeah, regardless of the technology or the machine, right? No matter how good an engineer you are, if we pick out some of the keywords from this conversation, it's openness, honesty, respect, trust. We're talking about the people, the connection, the relationships between people that actually make a difference above and beyond any form of technology or machinery or equipment, because it's about community, right? It's
absolutely.
You said it at the beginning. You're lucky to have had exposure to the good leaders that you have. I'm guessing you probably didn't just mean inside work, right? Because there's that lovely old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I know you've been inspired by your mum and her story. But it's everybody, right? It's us all together. It's like you and me, we live opposite ends of the country almost, it's being there. We've supported each other in various ways. It's that, isn't it? It's support.
It is. Family are really important. I mean, my mum, who started fishing at the age of 73, and now goes more often than me, is fantastic. Try something different, try something new. But your family and friends outside, I mean, my situation at the minute is not good, but the support I have around me is incredible.
Yeah. And we don't need to get to a point where we've been diagnosed with a terminal illness to need that support from people, right? That makes a difference to life and quality of life all the time, not just when we find ourselves in a devastating situation like you do right now.
Yeah, I mean, the question to ask yourself, if somebody needed help, would you help them? And if the answer's no, then you will get what you deserve in life. If the answer's yes, and you do it without reward, actually, people will do the same for you. It's reciprocal.
Yeah, it is, and it's a very interesting concept from a neurological point of view as well, because now we show that being altruistic, being kind, doing what's right for others actually gives us a bigger reward and improves the way our brain works and optimizes our brain function in ways that any external motivational factors can't. So, this whole kind of wisdom from the past, do unto others, that kind of stuff. It actually, we can prove it now why it makes sense. And I mean, you've recognised that naturally just by the nature of who you are and the way you approach things. So it's brilliant. Steve, you mentioned the apprentice situation earlier. On top of that, is there, and to try and reinforce the points we're making here about the values of honesty, respect, and trust, and openness as leaders, and leading by example keeps coming out clearly. Is there anything else that you would count as perhaps the most fulfilling aspect of your work? And if there is something in particular, why?
For me, it's seeing the younger generation grow. Like I said earlier, I've been extremely lucky to learn from good leaders and to learn actually about bad leaders, so what not to do. And I made a decision 10 years ago, actually, this is not about me anymore. This is about other people growing. And I try to do that every day.
That's brilliant, mate. And no wonder you get hugs when you go onto the shop floor. Good stuff. Right, last few questions, I think, and then I'll let you get back to your day. And again, this could sound morbid, but I hope it's not. It is a difficult situation, different to bridge, and I think it's natural for anybody to feel awkward. But I think it's also reality, right? This happens, and so the last couple of questions I want to ask you is more pertinent to the situation you find yourself in, and the fact you've got this motor neuron MND diagnosis. So how do you hope you'll be remembered by your colleagues and those you mentored?
Caring, fun-loving, but does not suffer fools.
Good stuff. I like that. Yeah. So because doing what's right for others isn't always about being soft and fluffy, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it's not. If you encourage bad behaviour, that person will learn bad behaviour is okay. And it's about clear boundaries.
Yeah. In which case, sorry, mate, it's not just about encouraging bad behaviour. It's dealing and addressing bad behavior or behavior that won't contribute to positive outcomes for self or others, isn't it? And interjecting, doing something about it, not being a bystander.
There's a phrase I keep saying to myself: if something happens and it annoys you, question one, can you do something about it? If the answer's no, then you can escalate or let it go. If the answer's yes, go do it. Go make the change. And just back on boundaries, even as children with a boundary, and my parents set boundaries, you grow within that boundary. Same with adults. In the working environment, there's boundaries. Your job as a leader is to let people grow within them boundaries.
Yeah, no, it's good. And people say, but what about freedom to act and self-determination theory? And I think the point is, inside a factory, when there is an outcome requirement, whether that be quality, cost, delivery, profit, whatever else it might be, there isn't always the option to let people have complete free reign within their role or their function, is there? There's got to be those boundaries. You wouldn't want somebody working in a nuclear power plant fiddling with the process, would you? You want them to follow the process. So yeah, understood. But we've got to get that balance. It's about balance, isn't it? It is.
It is.
Yeah, making those boundaries broad enough so people can grow, but so that things don't go so far out of control, whilst giving people an opportunity to get things wrong without blame, so they can learn.
Absolutely.
But not letting them go out of control at detriment to the outcome requirements of the business.
Yeah, particularly in a regulated environment.
Yeah. And again, when there's tangible product, I think in manufacturing, it's sometimes easier than when it's just transactional and highly regulated, like in finance, or, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's when you've got something you can get hold of and that person's hidden that component under the desk because they're afraid of the boss telling them off. There's something physical. You can't do that so easy when it's shifting numbers around in a computer. So, yeah. Thank you, mate. That's been brilliant. Let me think of one last thing then, and keep it in light of your recent diagnosis. And I think you touched on it earlier, but I mean, what getting more into the brain stuff, the thinking patterns, the thought, the regulation you have to exercise over yourself, the control, I guess, in some respects. How have you managed to stay positive and focused? Because you haven't missed a beat. You're still working. And I know some of the stuff that you did when the diagnosis wasn't complete has helped to inhibit the progress of the condition. So you're still in a much better shape than a lot of people, a lot further down the road. And it all comes back to from what I can see is your incredible positive mindset and focus. And what are your tricks? What can you tell people about how you think? What is that? What's going on?
Any life is limited. All right. So I do have deterioration in my arms and legs, but I can still walk, so I'll walk. I can still have a beer, so I'll have a beer. And doing what you can, not, just for yourself, but for others as well. So, do I want to give up work? No. Reason one, I love what I do. But the main reason are the people around me are fantastic. And that's what drives me. That if I'm down, actually I'll deteriorate faster. Actually staying strong due to all the stuff we've already discussed. But staying strong in my mind, staying positive, helps me get through every single day. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a 5-minute wobble at a funeral. And when I saw the box at the funeral, my mind went to, within a year or two, that might be me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was tough. And talking with the consultant about future things, I had a 2-minute wobble because the future is not good. But in my mind, every day is a bonus.
Yeah, what a way to look at it.
and that just drives me.
That's brilliant, mate. That's fantastic. So again, I think we know, because we've discussed it and we spent some time together around the subject, that thinking pattern, as soon as the words in your head are, that could be me in that box, the emotions follow, right? There's a chemical component that we know in neurons that makes us feel the way we feel, and it's linked intrinsically, has to be part of the firing process of the brain, the neurons in the brain. So I think to hear from you at this point in time, in this situation, that you're so aware of your thought patterns that when they do turn to the negative and it triggers that negative emotional response, within 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you know what to do to recover from that and get back to thinking positively. And the most powerful thing is that you're still there to try and do what's best for others, because you recognize how rewarding that is for you is just fantastic. It really is brilliant, mate. I can't thank you enough for this, Steve. It's been absolutely amazing. Just to close out, because I think I've pushed you enough on a number of different subjects there, and you've answered everything amazingly. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything you would wrap up with? Anything we haven't covered yet? That just to put the dot at the end of this sentence.
Yeah, I think life's short, and for some people it's shorter than others. But if you can influence more than one person in a positive way that will change their life forever, that is the final signature.
And I'm not going to say anything else on top of that, mate, because that's a brilliant way to end it. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, for being my friend over all these years, and all the best for for the future. Let's end the recording, and thanks again. Amazing, mate. Cheers.